Hey everyone, it's Andrew. Welcome back to another week of Ahsoka. It's so good to see you all here. Thank you so much for coming. So much to talk about today. My goodness, what an episode. Another episode that just went crazy. So many things. I've got the list going. I prepared a bunch of things I want to talk about. First of all, before we start, if you could leave a like on the video, that'd help me out so much. Helps more people see the stream. More people come, find my stuff, support what I'm doing. Really appreciate that. So much to talk about today, guys. As a heads up, this video will this stream will contain spoilers for Ahsoka Episode 5. So if you haven't seen it yet, maybe don't watch. Up to you. You will definitely get spoiled. All right. So much. Hey, how's it going, guys? So good to see you here. Watcher, good to be back, man. Thank you. Rakron has seen you around before. Thanks so much for coming, guys. Alrighty. Wow. Where do we even begin with an episode like today's? Like, between the amount of cameos this episode had, not necessarily like just the amount of like characters, the Clone Wars flashbacks, which were done in a different way, I think, than we all expected. They kind of really didn't really show the exact events of what happened in the past. Also, they were kind of they were kind of hazy in a way, I guess. So yeah, today, a bunch of things I want to talk about. Obviously, we're going to talk about the flashback sequences. We're going to talk about everything that happened with Anakin. We're going to talk about Ahsoka's past, what I thought of, and what we all thought of the young Ahsoka, I guess. The episode as a whole, everything involving the Purrgil. Also, the absence of Baylan Skoll, Shin Hati, Morgan Elsbeth, Sabine. None of them were in the episode, which is kind of crazy considering... I guess, this is episode 5. You're kind of expecting these main characters to be in almost every episode, but I guess this one was focused completely on, whatever, everything that was happening with Ahsoka and the flashbacks and the world between worlds. Dave Filoni. We need to talk about Dave Filoni, man. There's so much to say about him. He seems to be, I have this thing where I think a lot of people think this. He's literally the only person on Earth who seems to properly understand the world between worlds and the way it works and what is actually going on. I was reading this article the other day that even Dave Filoni seems to keep things from the other writers he's working with. He's like very secretive with the amount of details he's kind of revealing about the show and about where characters are going or about how this universe he's building here based on George Lucas's legacy is evolving. He seems to be like he'll kind of only let other writers know and let the other creative team know the details they need to know for the specific episode they're working on, and beyond that they don't know. There was an interview I was reading the other day. I can't remember who it was with, but he was literally talking about how he had no idea, like Marok. I think it was about Marok actually, yeah, and how the director of that episode, the last episode, still like at the time, I don't know when the interview was done, but doesn't actually know like who Marok is and what's the deal with the green gas coming out of him. So it's really cool. Like that's something obviously like we've all speculated that he has something to do with. He's like a night brother that's been brought back by Morgan Elsbeth, or he's Morgan Elsbeth was using her green magic to wield the force and create I guess a being in the suit that was Marok. But beyond that, like, he had no idea who he was. Still doesn't know if he's going to be brought back at a later stage, or if that's it for the character. And obviously these kinds of interviews can just be done up, can be done like months ahead. And also they don't actually reveal everything that we end up getting for the show. So interesting to see what's going to happen with that. But I think today's stream, we should just start by talking about the main points. Also, Captain Rex, man. Did you guys notice Captain Rex in the background? He was running past in his Phase 2 armor during the Siege of Mandalore sequence. That was so cool to see him back. Heard Tamura Morrison's voice back in there as well, which is every time. I was expecting to see his face, to be honest. So when Ahsoka was young and that clone that was lying on the bed, who was, suffering from his injuries, from the Clone Wars, from everything that had happened, and Ahsoka had her hand, grabbed the clone's hand, I was expecting to like, the camera to move on his face and we see Tamura Morrison lying there, but we didn't, which was unfortunate. Like, I was kind of disappointed about that. He had a thing over his face. Yeah. Oh, they made both armor. I didn't see the first one. That's epic. So they made the phase 1 armor as well. I completely missed that. That's so cool. Captain Rex making like a little cameo, which also indicates that obviously at some point you would think Captain Rex is going to be returning. I think this is something we've talked about every week on the stream. Captain Rex needs to come back to the show, or needs to come back to Star Wars at some point, because he's out there somewhere in the galaxy, and we don't actually know where he is or what he's doing. And obviously, you know, he and Ahsoka have a long history that goes way back. So we'll see what happens with that. But yeah, really need Captain Rex to come back in some way at some point. But I didn't know he also had appeared in the phase 1 armor. That's so cool. One thing I would say, the flashback sequences, even though they were like really fun and, you know, the whole everything that happens in the world between worlds is so trippy. Like, it's so kind of, you never know where it's going. It's got that mystical vibe, the presence. You just feel like it could take a turn at any second. You'd have no idea. I was really surprised when, you know, first of all, I kind of figured that Anakin was going to end up fighting Ahsoka, that he would, you know, that would be her challenge. I think that was something we kind of guessed, that yeah, they're probably going to end up facing off in some way, whether it be in the world between worlds or in another part of that realm, that galaxy. So that ended up happening pretty much right off the bat. But then when he kind of sliced open the floor and she fell through the clouds, and then just like it kind of transitions to her waking up on the ground, standing up. And that when that first clone trooper kind of ran out of the smoke, I was like, that moment really got me. I audibly, I think, said, I was like, whoa, here we go. You know, that's like the moment that things got really real. And you're like, all right, where are we going, Dave? What are we doing, Dave? I think I mentioned, or you guys might know this, this episode was actually directed by Dave Filoni. So which makes total sense. It kind of had his vibe to it. His whole like Star Wars Rebels mysticism, I think, was captured really well in this episode, and everything that happens in the world between worlds. And like I said, Dave Filoni's seemingly the only actual human on Earth who understands whatever's going on in the world between worlds. So that was really cool to see. But yeah, man, when that first clone trooper came out in the phase 1 armor, can you guys? I don't actually know where that what planet were they on? What battle was that supposed to be? Was it just like a vague general one, or is that one we'd actually seen in the Clone Wars TV series? It looked like a sandy planet, and it said it was one of Ahsoka's first experiences in the Clone Wars, and it was part of her training, obviously. But do you guys know what actual planet that was, or what battle that was? I kind of didn't get that one. Obviously, the one it evolved to was Mandalore, the Siege of Mandalore, when you know, Anakin had left her by then. Oh, Ryloth. Oh, of course. Okay, thank you. Okay, epic. Yeah. What season of Clone Wars with that? Yeah, there were Twi'leks there though. That's right. So yeah, okay. Yeah, awesome. What season of Clone Wars was that? I don't remember. But it's cool to see, like, I think a lot of people were expecting like an actual flashback. Something we'd see, like Ahsoka experiencing an actual memory from the Clone Wars recreated in live action. And I'm honestly kind of glad they didn't take it in that direction. I'm kind of glad that they did it in a way that's like, it's like a reimagining of her memories, where she's experiencing what she's experiencing with all the knowledge she had. Also, honestly, Anakin was like kind of intense. I think Huyang put it really correctly when Hera asked what Anakin was like, what Ahsoka's master was like, and he gets like the slit eyes, and he turns to her and says, intense. That was pretty funny, which I think is accurate, and it's definitely how a lot of people, I think, saw Anakin around the time. Like he definitely had a different energy to most Jedi. He wasn't as zen, I guess you could say, and he had that, like, you know, definite intensity to him. So that was interesting. Yeah, the whole Huyang thing, and what was I saying? It's like Anakin's energy towards Ahsoka in the scene when she was basically around the clones and feeling for them. I love that they gave the clones attention and were like really showing how terrible war can be, and showing how, you know, how really like dramatic it is, to be honest. Like I enjoyed that they're actually exploring the darker side of what the clones experienced in their lives, because it's dark. It's really dark stuff. And in some ways, the Clone Wars series does delve into that, but in other ways, like the target audience for the Clone Wars series is still like, supposedly a younger audience, right? And I think in these kinds of shows like Ahsoka, they can explore, it's kind of, I guess, like Star Wars is always supposed to be for kids, according to George Lucas, right? But at the same time, it's like so many dark things happen, like, Anakin's fall to the dark side, the fact he kills all the Jedi, all the younglings. The Clone Wars are so dark, everything that happens, the amount of death and fear and just, I don't know, pain that's sped throughout the galaxy is tremendously dreadful. So I'm glad that they're exploring that in a way that we saw the effects the war and even just being in a battle had on the clone troopers. Just seeing the clones in pain, looking sad, miserable, surrounded by explosions, blaster bolts, seeing them lying there in pain with their injuries. I'm so glad we're seeing more of that, because I think it's something that in some ways is overlooked and only gets explored in maybe like the comics, maybe in other expanded Star Wars media that's not as mainstream. I'm glad we're seeing, how dark it really is. And the moment Ahsoka grabbed that clone's hand was, I think, really, like, I felt emotional. I was like, man, the clones, even though sure they've been bred for war, they've like grown up on Kamino, fully bred from birth, basically from their capsule form into soldiers. That doesn't mean that they don't evolve and have personalities, which is obviously what we saw during the Clone Wars and is what we're seeing here again in this episode, where she's connecting with that clone, and it's just a sad moment. Yeah, I agree. The Ahsoka young actress was honestly, like, I connected with her performance. I think I'm not necessarily saying she captured the performance of Ashley Eckstein from the Clone Wars, but at the same time, like, I'm like, it was a believable young Ahsoka. I was like, this feels like young Ahsoka. Even just seeing her with the different lightsaber colors as well was so cool. Like green lightsabers, and then obviously the blue on Siege of Mandalore, the sabers Anakin gives her in Clone Wars Season 7. It was so cool to see them using the color of her sabers to like evolve the character. Another thing I do want to talk about a bit more is color a bit later on, because they evolved Ahsoka. May as well just get it get it out now. They evolved Ahsoka's character throughout this series and this episode. Did you notice that? I'm pretty sure this episode, after she comes out of the world between worlds, after she's saved, I think, is the first time in this series we've seen her wear white, and seen her wear a much, a lot of white. Like, she had the white kind of long sleeve gloves on as well, and she was also wearing kind of the white cloak, which we saw at the end of Star Wars Rebels, but also when that scene was kind of like remade for this show, where she picks up Sabine and then they fly off together at the end of Rebels. In that, she was wearing white, but in the Ahsoka version, she was wearing grey. And it was cool to see her wearing white, because that like symbolizes it's like rebirth. It's an evolution of the character in a way that is a visual representation of the evolution of her character. And she's Gandalf. Yeah, we also saw her forehead for the first time. Her forehead was she didn't have the what do you call it? Like the I don't know, hairpiece on, the tiara. Would you call it? I don't know. It's like a headband kind of thing. Yeah, she didn't have that on. That was cool. But the fact she's wearing white, the rebirth, she's evolved. She's kind of come out of the world between worlds. She was also smiling a lot more towards the second half of this episode, even though like Sabine is gone. It's like a return to her roots and who her character is, and it's evolving from the guilt carrying Ahsoka that we've had in the first few episodes of this, because I think that's part of what this was all exploring as well. And I'm very curious if we're going to go back into the world between worlds at some point, or if she's going to have some other interaction with Anakin. You would think that's likely, because I don't think all of her guilt around Anakin falling to the dark side has been resolved just yet. I think she's still carrying that weight. There's something there that I think she still needs to work through. So clearly she was carrying, some pretty dark feelings from the Clone Wars. She grew up in war, and that's something I think people don't, realize about Ahsoka. She kind of, she grew up during the Clone Wars. Like, she was constantly exposed to war from a very young age. If you watch Tales of the Jedi and you see kind of her journey in that series, it's crazy that, she had to go through that as part of her whole life, and it was rough, man. Like, it's been a rough life for her. So it's like really cool to see her evolve out of that, and being symbolized in her character and in how she's dressing now, and also the fact she's smiling more, the fact she's like returning to energy. Yeah. That's mostly what I wanted to say about that. Thank you so much, X Infinity. Good to see you again, man. I appreciate the donation. Thank you, man. It goes a long way. Goes a long way. We can stream every week. Keeping the streams coming. All right. Let's talk more about the Clone Wars flashback. One thing, all of that, I'm pretty sure, was shot in the volume, which is, you know, that giant LED screens, what they used to shoot the Mandalorian, which in some ways worked. And obviously it worked because it's like, yeah, we're in the world between worlds. Everything's a bit mystical, a bit hazy, which is why it was kind of, you know, there's smoke everywhere, there's dust, there's sand. You can't really see too far into the distance. And let's be real, part of the reason they're doing that though is just to like cut production costs. Like they obviously, it's a lot more expensive to create an entire location with, you know, beautiful like sprawling backgrounds and where you can see far into the distance. That's way more expensive than just creating what they did here, by masking the background and everything with a bit of fog and smoke. It's like the render distance didn't work yet. It's like we're playing a game that has like short render distance, like we're playing Minecraft on like low settings and you can't actually see that far into the distance because, you know, you haven't been able to afford a graphics card that can achieve that. It's the same thing here. Disney are cutting costs by creating a mystical world where you can't see that far into the distance, which honestly worked kind of well for where it is and kind of what's happening at the time. You know, she's in the world between worlds. It's supposed to be mystical and fantastical and a bit creepy, to be honest, at times. But yeah, that's kind of part of why that works. So cool to see that. Cool to see Rex. Yeah, heard Tamora Morrison's voice. Still want to see him back in the show. Like, when is Captain Rex coming into it? What I was trying to get to before, though, was actually Anakin's interaction with Ahsoka on, I think it was on Ryloth. Yeah, after she was holding the clone's hand, in the flashback sequence. That was the epitome of what I think Huyang was saying about her being, about Anakin being intense. It was so kind of hard to... It was a bit hard to watch, to be honest. Anakin was so harsh with her. He's almost like training her for war. And in some ways, in that scene, it felt like, even though he's the master, even though he's supposed to be like very wise, very kind of, you know, evolved at that point, Anakin's only in his early 20s, like very early 20s. I think at that time during the Clone Wars, during that scene, he still had the short hair, I'm pretty sure. So he would have only been like 20, 21 years old. Which is, you know, super young to be a leader and to be in that. And he's obviously been blinded as well, in that sense that he is just, yeah, like, you have to adapt to the times. We're fighting a war here. I teach you to fight, and I train you to fight and be a warrior. Which Ahsoka really wasn't happy about. She really was like, you know, is that all I'm made for, kind of thing? What if I don't want to fight? And he's like, well, then you'll die. And it's like, come on, Anakin, like, relax, settle down a bit, you know? She's so young. You're breeding her for war. And I thought it was like also quite intense from that scene and her experiencing that flashback to then evolving into seeing her in the Siege of Mandalore, where she's literally like slicing Mandalorians up. I don't know, what's Ahsoka's kill count, man? Because like, there's no way she feels comfortable about that. There's no way she feels good about that. And you're just seeing her like slice through like clone after clone, slice through Mandalorian after Mandalorian. It's so like full on and far out, man. Like it hit me hard. I'm like, look at what she's become. Look at how, like, you know, powerful, and how also like she, you know, there's some, it always feels like Ahsoka still, there is a bit of dark side in her. She's not like on a clear path, and that's the same for most Jedi during the Clone Wars. They're kind of fighting for the greater good, but that doesn't mean what they're doing is good. They're still killing. They're still like, you know, they're not keepers of the peace. I like that he mentioned that as well. The Samuel L. Jackson, the Mace Windu line. He's like, Anakin said something about we're not keepers of the peace anymore. Like, times have changed, that kind of thing. Yeah, I don't know. That really got me, and I was. It's such a dark moment. It's a dark thing to experience. Yeah, Cyberwolf, man, thank you so much, and X Infinity again. I appreciate the donation so much. Thank you, guys. Did you put that little fox in there with the love heart? How do you do that? Is that like a custom thing, or am I just like a total noob? Am I a total boomer when it comes to this thing? Is that like an emoji you can choose for the super chat? I love it. Are there other emojis you can choose like that? Are there like themed emojis? Can I create my own animated emojis like that? That'd be cool. X Infinity. We need a Jedi Survivor Cal in this series. Like I've said, all right, Jedi, can you, all right, bring in Cal in, sure. That would be cool. First, it would be cool, but I also like almost don't want to see it happen. Obviously, it could potentially fit the timeline. We don't really know what happens to Cal after Jedi Survivor. We're not at that point. Yes, we haven't evolved to that point. Cal's story hasn't progressed enough. We need to see what happens in the third and what will potentially be final Jedi game. They initially said they want to make a trilogy, so I'm assuming the next one is going to be you know, the final one, but I'm assuming also like, you know, Lucasfilm and EA are going to want to make more Jedi games, potentially using the same engine and potentially developed by Respawn. I just think it might be a different team who's working on them. But anyway, Cal, at that point in the timeline, he could be around somewhere. He'd be like a Jedi master, you'd hope, by this point. And he'd be a lot older. How old would Cal be in like the Ahsoka series? At least like another, what is it, like 30 years after the events? 30? It's like 30, 40 years later. He'd be too old. So they'd have to like deepfake the actor to make him look older. Also, all right, that's what another thing we have to talk about. Anakin's deepfaking in this. Anakin's like CGI to make him look younger. In episode 4, right at the end, when it's first revealed to us that, you know, Anakin's, oh my gosh, it's Anakin. You know, he says, hey Snips, didn't expect to see you so soon. The CGI was like a little bit, okay, like, how you going? You know what I mean? It's a bit like, a bit sketchy. It was a bit, I wasn't sure about it. Yeah. But in this episode, seeing him like younger and in every creation of him was so good, to be honest. Like I was not even thinking about it. CGI and deepfaking needs to be, the idea of it is to be at a point where you don't even think about it. You don't even recognize it because it's so good that you're not even noticing it. It's kind of like sound design. Sound design is really good when you're not thinking about it at all, when it's just like you're so immersed in whatever's going on that nothing is kind of jarring to you. And when we first saw Anakin in the previous episode when he was revealed, it was a bit like, oh, that face looks a little bit weird. Like deep faking wise, it's not the best we've seen. In this episode though, man, they nailed it. I thought it was so impressive, and I wasn't, because I like I said, I wasn't even thinking about it. It wasn't something that came to mind at all. It was just like immersive and fully, you know, each version of him looked to be completely normal, and how he would look at that time and in that point in the timeline. I loved the look of him. I loved seeing him younger as well. It was interesting they gave him like slightly longer hair for his like kind of Attack of the Clones, or just after that. It was like the early days of the Clone Wars. I think it was what it was implying, right? Anakin grew his hair out during the Clone Wars to get to the point where he has the long Revenge of the Sith hair, right? So it was cool seeing him. It was cool seeing him at that point where he's just, I don't know, yeah, like he had the shorter hair, and it was kind of indicating it was a point between those times. And that's not even necessarily something we saw him with in the Clone Wars show. We saw him with like slightly shorter hair, but this was also like significantly shorter than that. That's my thing. Oh, there are more emojis. Thank you guys. Epic Cyberwolf. Thanks so much, dude. All right, we got another. Who's this wolf character? Is this just like YouTube's mascot? Can someone like I said, I'm a total streaming noob. I barely know what I'm doing. and we got this like little wolf dancing around with the number 1. That's so cute. X Infinity. Thanks so much again, man. Give me the thumbs up. It's like my bomb. Look, my bomb. You see? There he is. You can see him with the thumbs up. Same thing. That's what I mean. I gotta get him on there. Is that a possibility? I want to do that, because you can actually like use my emoji. If you, I think if you're a member, you can use the emoji that I created and put in here. It's fun. All right, streaming noob. Thank you, Fran Forsyth, as well. I appreciate that. Thanks to the burger. I will eat that later. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. You're making me hungry, man. I gotta keep streaming. I can't keep eating. Anyway, getting back to Ahsoka flashbacks. Anakin being quite a harsh master. Another thing we got to talk about is the transitions, man. The transitions from Anakin, like just those brief moments where you see Darth Vader in this, or oh, okay, we'll talk about that first. I thought it was so seamless. I think the first time we saw him was when he was walking away. It was after that scene where he was really intense with Ahsoka and really just like I've trained you for war. This is what you're doing. You have to adapt to the times, deal with it, you know? Even though you're a kid, even though you've experienced no life outside of this, and even though, yeah, sure, I'm your mentor, I'm your master, but man, it was intense. And so Anakin just like walks back. He's walking away into the smoke, into the haze, into the mist, the desert. It was at that moment that we saw like a lightning flash, or what was it, like an explosive in the distance, and that kind of transitioned him to walking as Darth Vader just for a brief moment. He's walking with his lightsaber by his side, and it turned red, and he was Darth Vader. So crazy, man. What a crazy moment to see that. X Infinity, man, you're crazy. Thank you so much. I have to go, but remember my Force Ghost will be here. Man, your Force Ghost was always here. I appreciate that, man. Far out, dude. That's like so generous. Thank you so much. Lovely to see you again, and thanks for supporting this every week. Thanks to everyone who's come nearly every week as well. It's lovely to see all of you here, but guys, like, having you here every week, it's been such a cool place to like come and chill and just like hang out after the show. This is the first for me. Like I keep saying, I've never really done streaming before, and just like to come and chill with you guys and like chat about Star Wars is like epic. It's so much fun. Like I can have this whole episode and you know, like just like I sit and watch the episode, and then we can come just like chat about it like friends. It's so cool. It's such a great experience. I never realized I could kind of do this on YouTube. Do you know what I mean? Like I've been making videos. You guys know I've been on YouTube for like 9 years. I think it's 9 years in like October, in another month. Thank you so much. I gotta start streaming some games too. That's the next goal. We're gonna get it all set up. We're gonna get it set up on the PC. There's more streaming. There's more videos coming. Got big things coming. So much to do. Every week, I'm like, there's so much to do this week. And I'm just like, I don't know, overwhelmed with the amount of things I want to get done. And then we get close to, I don't know, like you should see the amount of lists of videos I have to make. I'm halfway through like 5 videos right now. There's more coming. Anyway, all right, let's talk about the Darth Vader transition. You guys keep distracting with donations. Is this what happens? This is what streaming's like? You just get distracted all the time? I'm trying to read all your comments and then the donations at the same time. It's crazy. Yeah, 9 years, guys. I know. It's crazy. How can I have been doing this for 9 years? I've been full-time for like, I think 4 or 5 years now. Oh, Sneelio, gifting 5 Bombastic memberships. You can do that? You guys are teaching me how to stream. Everyone's kind of told me that I'll learn more about streaming just as I'm doing it, but so cool. Talzan, everyone's complaint. All right, thank you, Talzan. Appreciate it, man. Everyone's complaint that Ahsoka didn't feel like herself seems like it was on purpose now. I completely agree with that. You've raised a great point there. It does feel like, you know, it was kind of just part of her character development and her characterization. They wanted to present Ahsoka as kind of, how would you say, they wanted to like give her that vibe that, you know, she's carrying all this burden and all this weight around with her, and that's kind of what's, you know, like that's what's been getting her down for all this time. It's kind of hard to, it's been hard for her to move beyond that. And I agree. The second half of this episode was kind of the first time it seemed like, okay, now we're actually seeing who Ahsoka is, what she's about, and, you know, what you know, where this is potentially going. I'm really keen to see her evolve in future episodes. But yeah, it seemed like they were trying to present a darker version of Ahsoka that was really carrying this burden, this weight of, this emotional weight around her, emotional weight experience from the Clone Wars, still traumatized from her being a child, growing up surrounded by war, and also still feeling responsible for not only Anakin's turn to the dark side and, you know, everything that happened, like Revenge of the Sith, and just after that during Clone Wars Season 7 as well, but also for the death of her clone troopers. And that was something, like I was saying, they explored so well in this episode. It's so cool to see that they're really willing to go into the darkness of war and the tragedy of war and the tragedy of being a clone trooper. That's something that I think the Bad Batch is exploring in a way as well, and the Clone Wars also explained. But being born as a clone trooper in some ways is tragic, because you're born to be a soldier. You're born for war. You're born in a time of war to be in war, and most of them end up dying, right? What happens to the clone troopers? I really, really want the Bad Batch Season 3 to go so much deeper into the after effects of the Clone Wars on clone troopers in general. See where they end up. See how that guy in Obi-Wan, that clone who's just like lying on the side of the street, see what happens to him. Or those kinds of clones. Because yeah, after the Clone Wars, they lose all meaning and purpose. And I think the Bad Batch is kind of about them evolving and finding their own purpose and finding, what happens and where they go and stuff. But man, I still feel like there's so much more development there. And it seems like in some ways, Dave Filoni is willing to explore that. I mean, this is a show about Ahsoka and it's set in the post-Empire period. So it's a long time since the Clone Wars and we're still seeing Clone Wars flashbacks and Clone Wars moments. I really like that. Also, Talzan, you were saying at the end, she was high energy, said it's better than going nowhere. I agree. Yes, she's had like a completely, it's like her character evolution. She's suddenly looking on the bright side. She's seeing, she's smelling the roses. She's seeing her glass half full. And that's the Ahsoka we haven't seen. And that's what, we have been, I guess, I wouldn't call it complaining, but just criticizing a little bit about the show in previous weeks. It's been too much about I was saying Ashley Eckstein's Ahsoka that we saw in Clone Wars and in Star Wars Rebels seemed so different from the version of Ahsoka that Rosario Dawson has been presenting. And this was basically, I think, the first time I'm finally starting to see the Ashley Eckstein version of Ahsoka come through. Which is great. Characters evolved. X Infinity, man, another $5, man. You're a legend. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. I guess you could say it's also about the age of the characters and how there's always going to be some live action is such a different game to animation. And animation, the characters kind of have to be over expressive and over animated. And in some ways that's part of the transition, but it still felt like the characters are so far removed. But now it finally seems like we're starting to feel more of that version of Ahsoka. Even Anakin's characterization. Even though this episode honestly presented quite a dark version of Anakin, it still felt kind of similar to how he was in the Clone Wars. He had that sense of cheekiness and brashness and arrogance to him, and especially in the way he was talking to Ahsoka and kind of having that really strict mentorship over her. Even the way he was saying things like, "Oh, I still have more to teach you," and slices open the ground and then she falls. I haven't taught you everything yet. I don't know. There's a lot there that's that I think has evolved, and we're seeing more of from his character. But also, it seems to be really connected to. It seems like Hayden Christensen made sure he watched all of Rebels. He would have watched Rebels, but made sure he watched all the Clone Wars, saw what the Anakin was like in the Clone Wars, and was like, okay, I'm gonna try and present a version of my character that I basically brought to life way back in Attack of the Clones from Revenge of the Sith, and present that in a way that's that would be believable and connect with the Clone Wars version of my character, but also in a darker way. His acting as well in this really hit me hard. Do you guys agree with that? The way X Infinity, what are you doing, mate? What, dude? That's, oh my gosh, mate. You're crazy. Thank you so much. That's ridiculous. You're gonna make me cry. Please stop. Please stop. All right, that's enough, dude. You're crazy. Thank you so much. That's so generous. Oh man, all right. I'm getting emotional. That's a lot. Thank you. I did not expect that at all. You've been donating every week, man. So sweet. I completely lost my train of thought when I saw that pop up. What the heck was I talking about, guys? Oh man. All right, Anakin, his characterization, Clone Wars, presenting Ahsoka. Stop interrupting my streams, man. I'm gone. I'm totally gone. I'm emotional. Anakin, thank you. His acting. Oh gosh, we're back. Yeah, there was sometimes just his facial expressions or the way he'd kind of turn and look at Ahsoka and I'm doing what must be done. Dude, you're a legend. Stop. Please. It's too much. Thank you so much. Please though. You're so sweet. Thank you. So sweet. Thank you so much, man. All right. Anakin's acting. Loved it. Facial expressions, really good, really kind of, I don't know, meant a lot and meant that, you could see like the emotional connection he had with Ahsoka through Hayden Christensen's acting. The way he kind of, I don't know, it was just the way he was interacting with her in a way that he was, you could see it in his eyes. Like I said, there were certain moments where he kind of turned to Ahsoka or turned away from her, or the moment that I think like was huge for all of us was when he went dark side. I think he started with he's like, all right, you're gonna duel me again. There was something, I can't remember what he said specifically, but it was something about like, okay, we're gonna, you have to fight me again. You face, oh yeah, she said, hang on. She was like, yeah, he said wrong answer. He said like incorrect. She was like, no. Did he ask her, do I want to live or die? I think it might have been something about that. Anyway, he's got his back to her, and then he turns his red lightsaber on. This is the first time, I think. Did it happen in Clone Wars? I don't think there's any time during Clone Wars we saw that, but he just turns his red lightsaber on. And we see like what I guess Darth Vader would be if he had a red lightsaber and went Sith before becoming Darth Vader, which I guess technically we saw briefly in Revenge of the Sith, although he still used the blue lightsaber, and we don't really see him with the Sith eyes. That's the other thing. We do a bit, but not to the level that this explored. So it was so cool to see a Sith version of Anakin and not of Darth Vader. But also him wielding his red lightsaber was so just full on dark, intense. It was like the climax of everything we'd kind of gone through in this episode and everything we'd experienced up until this point. Yeah, his eyes changing color, and that was part of the acting too. Actually, it was those moments where you saw his eyes change to the Sith eyes, and then the moment after he dueled Ahsoka and she disarmed him, and he took a step backwards and he looked down and seemed to like close his eyes, and it was that moment that I was like, man, the acting is like so on point. He's so connected to Anakin's character. He's so connected to just like this galaxy and this world that I think is, obviously, made his career and given him so much. And he loves the fandom. He loves being immersed in Star Wars, which is so epic to see from such a prominent actor in Star Wars. But at the same time, it's just like, I don't know, like it's such a cool moment. Him getting the red eyes, turn it, yeah, and then becoming blue again, and him smiling again after that, which was such a wholesome. It was such a wholesome smile for that to in that moment. Thanks, Talzon. Appreciate it, man. It was such a wholesome moment. Him smiling again and just like having that full of evolution of his character in this version. So I think we also need to like kind of talk about what did Ahsoka go through here and what did she experience? Let me just have a quick drink. A lot of thoughts coming out. This is so much to say. So obviously, Ahsoka was in the world between worlds, right? There's kind of no question about that, even though, she didn't really walk up to any gateways or pathways like we saw in Star Wars Rebels. This was a different version of the world between worlds, I guess. It's kind of like, I'm calling it like Star Wars Limbo, where she's basically dead, you would say, right? She's kind of just in this place where she's, I don't know, she's passed away. She's like unconscious under the water. Clearly, she'd fallen into the water. I don't know how the rocks didn't kill her, by the way. She fell off. Did you see that cliff face? Did you see how many jagged rocks were on the edge of that cliff face when she fell off in the previous episode when Balin's skull knocked her off? I don't know, man. Like, it felt like, yeah, it hit her. I don't know. I just feel like her falling, she would have sustained some injuries. Clearly, that's not the case. That's all good. She's protected by the Force. I'll give her that. Anyway, where do you guys actually think she was? Because it's like the world between worlds, but it's also just like this Star Wars like space Force limbo where she's dead, but she's not dead, and she's able to experience visions through the Force. Was this all just a creation of her mind? Did she just experience this through her mind? Did she just kind of I don't know, experience this in a way that was, you know, some was it just a vision to her, or did Anakin actually come to her through the Force? Is she just processing all of this in her mind through the Force, or was this some version of Anakin's Force ghost that she actually connected with? I'm not sure we're ever actually going to get answers to these things. I'm not sure anyone really knows how this mystical land works apart from Dave Filoni. Like I was saying, it seems like Dave Filoni is kind of the only one that, you know, really understands this world. And it's hard to, it's hard to kind of understand where, I guess, you know, in what space she's actually in. Like, if we have to get down to the nitty gritty and actually like define this thing and say, hey, this, you know, this is where she is and this is why it's happening. I don't think it's like something they can really explain. I don't think it's on a level where we can just say, hey, this is, I don't know, this is her galaxy and this is where she's living. Yeah, that's my thing. Thanks. I've just read some nice comments. Thanks, guys. Thanks for the support. I really appreciate it. Thank you. There was one lovely one. Sean, really appreciate it, man. Aw, thanks. Your 5-year-old said Andrew is cool. Thanks. Say hi. Thomas, thanks for the donation, dude. Really appreciate it. This is one of the best pieces of Star Wars since Revenge of the Sith. Dave needs the keys to the galaxy. It seems like he's got them, and it seems like he's the only one who actually knows how to use them. World Between Worlds is such a weird thing because it's like kind of something that's building upon... I think this is what makes the World Between Worlds so fascinating. It's the first kind of mystical element I think people really connect with, and people, you know, fans like us really kind of engage with in a way that it's evolved George Lucas's idea of the Force. I think that's the big, that's the big thing behind it. I don't think the World Between Worlds is something George Lucas ever really conceived of. I could be totally wrong about that. Maybe he talks about this kind of thing at some point. George Lucas has, you know, he obviously he created Star Wars. He understands the Force basically better than anyone. But in the same way, it seems like Dave is taking that in a direction that is evolving it to the point of beyond even our comprehension. Do you know what I mean? Like, where is it going, and what are we talking about here? In that, like, what world are we living in? I don't know. Well, yeah, guys, like, I really want to know some of your thoughts on the World Between Worlds thing. Like, where are they and what are they doing? Is this Ahsoka's vision? Is it in her head, or is it something a lot larger, a lot kind of bigger? And are we going back there this season? Because I feel like Anakin's involvement in this series isn't done, and part of the problem as well here, though, like, okay, we're asking for like Captain Rex to come into the show and Tamora Morrison to be included, Tamora Morrison to play Captain Rex, which is what we all totally want. I kind of guessed a few weeks ago that we're probably, if we're getting a season 2 of Ahsoka, then we're probably not going to see Captain Rex until a season 2. Oh, guys, you know what? Forget about Captain Rex showing up in Ahsoka. Can we just give Captain Rex his own show? Like, can we get a live action version of a Captain Rex show starring Tamora Morrison? Like, who wouldn't want to see that? Tamora Morrison not only, like, is the most memeable man alive, he, I think, brings so much character and personality and just fun. And, you know, everyone kind of has mixed opinions on what they did with the Book of Boba Fett, which was, you know, it's fun in some ways. There were parts of it I enjoyed. There were parts of it I think a lot of people enjoyed, but also parts of it like, yeah, you've completely changed Boba Fett. So it would be so cool to see not only a season 2 of that, but a redemption of, or like an evolution of Captain Rex's character in his own series. What I was trying to say though, now that Ahsoka is traveling to the other galaxy where Thrawn and Ezra potentially are, they're aboard the Purgil. We're likely not going to see Captain Rex in this season unless they somehow travel back, because you have to think, okay, next episode, right? Episode 6. There's only 3 episodes left, which is insane. I can't believe there's only 3 left. Next episode, right? Half of the episode or parts of this episode, maybe the first quarter, is just going to be about them traveling to the location. Wherever they get next, they're going to get there, and then they're going to start searching for searching for Thrawn and searching for Ezra. It's probably going to take them most of the full episode to figure out where they are. And we're not actually going to see anything like any actual like story progression or of evolution. It's going to be a bit of a traveling episode. It kind of has that feeling, especially with the climax that this episode had. The kind of cliffhanger of Anakin in the previous episode, and then we saw the payoff of that in this one. The next episode is going to be kind of seemingly, I think, not potentially as mind-blowing. Sure, we might see some stuff that's really cool, like, it's the first time basically in Star Wars we've actually seen what happens when you travel to a galaxy outside of the main Star Wars galaxy. But also, it just doesn't seem like, with where the show is going, it's going to be the final 2 episodes where we really get the payoff of whatever happens in the setup of the next one, because there's so much that kind of needs to happen before we can get anywhere. So, with all that said, because they're traveling to another galaxy, there's no way, Captain Rex is going to be involved, because how is he going to travel to the other galaxy? He's not. If we see a Captain Rex, it'll likely be in the next season. He's likely off in the galaxy doing something else. We're going to see, hopefully in The Bad Batch, season 3, the final season of that series, we're hopefully going to see what happens and, how he kind of gets to where he is at that point in the timeline, which is kind of just after the Clone Wars and after Order 66, to where he gets in Star Wars Rebels, being with Wolf and, oh my gosh, you guys are gonna, Gregor. No, who's he with? Wolf and Gregor, right? I'm right. Yeah, okay. I hope I'm right about that. You guys talking about Battlefront 2. What are we talking about Battlefront 2 for? You liked my last Battlefront 2 video? Thank you guys, I appreciate that. I've got more. I'm working on another one right now. It's actually, it's about more mods. The Battlefront stuff is so much fun. I love, played Battlefront for years. It's great. What a game. Still, everyone's sad it cancelled. Let's change that. Let's all change that and see what's next. Talzan, got a question. Thanks for the donation again, man. Appreciate it. Do you think she dies stopping Thrawn in the new galaxy? Interesting. Since we hear her voice in Rise... Oh, yes, we did hear her voice. We heard her voice in The Rise of Skywalker, speaking along with all the other dead Jedi. Interesting. It does seem like... Thank you for confirming, Gregor. Yes. I'm glad I got that right. It's just Greg. It does seem like at some point, Ahsoka's character will have to kind of have that... transformative evolutionary moment where her characterization is done and she will, and that's what happens to all mentor characters, basically. It's kind of a classic story writing trope that the mentor, after passing on their knowledge and their wisdom, as part of the hero's journey, they must die so that the apprentice or the hero character can kind of rise above that and evolve themselves. We saw that in so many different ways. Some of you guys might know this. There's this book by Joseph Campbell. He's a writer from the 40s, 50s, 60s, that kind of era, I believe. This book is called Hero's Journey. When George Lucas was writing Star Wars, the original Star Wars, he, I believe, at times had Joseph Campbell on set or was referencing this book to figure out how do you construct the most... engaging evolutionary hero's journey, which is Luke's journey, right? And we see that in full effect in the way that, Ben Kenobi dies. He sacrifices himself. The mentor character has to die. We saw the same thing with Qui-Gon in Phantom Menace. We've seen the same thing in so many other, mediums. So many other films, so much other media. I'm trying to think of others off the top of my head. Nothing's coming. But, Star Wars is the perfect example because, George Lucas literally had the writer on set. It's, yeah. You have the book. That's so cool. I've actually never read it, but there's a diagram. You know what? Should we set up a scene? You guys want to set up... Let me try and set up a scene. And, I'm going to show you what I'm talking about. I think it's, really engaging. The hero's journey diagram. It's really, it's fascinating. To me, it's fascinating. And if you guys are, interested in storytelling and interested in seeing where Ahsoka's journey is going, this is basically, what is, you can almost, I don't want to say, predict, but you can kind of see where it's going. And I haven't set up the thing yet. My bad. Oh, that's terrible. What am I doing? All right. I don't know how to set up a scene clearly, so don't worry about that. Let me just like say it to you, and then I'll set up scenes for next time. You get the call to adventure. Actually, you know what? I can just move this to there. That's a genius idea. Why don't I just do that? Yeah, I'm just showing like the whole back end like to you guys. What a noob. Total noob. Here we go. Here we go. Here we go. I promise this will be worth it. Alrighty, we've got it up. Okay, you guys see this? Okay, so we see call to adventure, right? So Luke gets called to adventure. Same thing happens with Ahsoka, right? She gets his supernatural aid. So that's kind of you know, something external that helps the character. Threshold. The mentor then comes in. So that's Obi-Wan's character, obviously. Helper, transformation, death and rebirth. So the hero basically has to fall, and this is generally around the time that also the what do you call it? The mentor character has to kind of die. Maybe there's another diagram that explains this in a different way. Refusal of return. Whole thing. If you guys want to write a story here, death of mentor, it's right here. It's part of her journey. So the whole thing I'm trying to get at by saying here is that Ahsoka's character at some point will potentially die. And if that's something you guys are speculating, I think it's potentially likely it can happen because of you know where she is and who her character is, and you know, her mentorship over Sabine. She's basically traveling into the beyond to try and look, we're crossing the threshold right now, right? She's been called to action. Refusal to call. This was originally her saying, no, I'm not gonna like help Sabine. I'm not gonna do all these things. It's too much. She's evolving. We're in this road through trials, right? This was the ordeal. That's what we had today. We had the experience with Anakin, and she was faced with kind of, you know, that whole thing. She defeats her mentor in defeating Anakin, and then we're going back to all of this path now, and that's going to be the remainder of the season. Really interesting. I don't know. I hope you guys find that interesting. I find it fascinating. That's kind of a big, you know, it's like, it's a storytelling thing, but at the same time, yeah, that's kind of where her thing could end up going. Yeah, there you guys. You guys are explaining. You're saying plot twist, they end up in the Milky Way galaxy. Can you imagine? Yeah, they arrive on Earth. What a huge like revelation that would be. That'd be so funny, man. Like subvert, like I want to do like Star Wars spoofs, and what I always love like what ifs and what if galaxies and that kind of thing. But yeah, that'd be so funny, man, if just like evolved to that point. Yeah, okay. She's evolving. Ahsoka might die. She might need to sacrifice herself for Sabine. Maybe that's where it's going. Maybe that's where her character is going. It seems like at some point she kind of will. Part of this whole journey has been to basically bring back the main character of Star Wars Rebels, though. Ezra is still missing. We don't know where Ezra is. He's somewhere lost, which is where they're going now to find him. That's why Sabine went. So I'm wondering if at some point they're going to want to make like his character and Sabine's character potentially like the main protagonists of these stories. I don't know. I'm not sure. Maybe, you know, Ahsoka's just getting her first own season, and maybe then this show will evolve into something else. Maybe Star Wars Rebels, that continuity will continue, and maybe we will see, you know, her journey evolve in a way that maybe Ahsoka dies, and then we get to the point where, what do you call it? I don't know. Maybe we get to the point where, you know, the series ends up being about Sabine and Ezra and everything that happens beyond this. How far do you think they're going to take this in these characters? At what point do you think they're going to kind of semi-retire these characters? And I don't know, like, do you think Ahsoka's thing is going to keep going? Do you think we're going to continue in the same direction we're going now? Yeah, I'm really curious to see. Because like we're playing, Disney seemed to be like the time that Lucasfilm have been exploring a lot in recent times is this New Republic era, right? Basically like Book of Boba Fett, Mandalorian, Ahsoka takes place here. Star Wars Squadrons took place here. I'm sure I'm missing something. It's kind of, you know, it's this era between the sequel trilogy and the original trilogy. That's we don't know what, like, we don't know the full extent of how we get from here to here, and we're exploring that. I I don't know, like how much further are they gonna take that though? Are they gonna continue to explore that here? Are they gonna continue these characters? Yes, they do seem to be leaning into the Jason thing quite a lot as well, and I'm curious if they're gonna like continue that. Can you imagine though? Star Wars is this ever evolving, like, it's this ever evolving universe of storytelling. And the actor who's playing Jason Sindola right now, can you imagine like in 20 years time, when that actor is older, they end up like giving him his own show or something like that. They end up evolving him to a point where, yeah, they're like, yeah, okay, this he's an interesting character. He falls in an interesting part of the timeline. Let's even just give him a cameo or give him a part on a new show. Maybe that Jason Sindola. Isn't that his name? Did I get that wrong? It's Jason Sindola. I could be wrong. He's definitely. Why are you making me doubt myself? I don't know. I can kind of see that. All right. I got a bunch. I haven't even looked at my list. I've been talking for however long. Haven't even looked at the list of things we had to discuss. Oh, I thought the same thing. Yeah, watching the episode, Jason might take the place of Leia's kids. I mean, okay, that's the other thing though, because we're getting this film with potentially Daisy Ridley, right? We're getting this film where it's going to be about everything that happens with, I guess, it's like the recreation of the what am I trying to say? The next film we're getting, right, is about like Rey rebuilding the Jedi Order, and there's rumors John Boyega is going to be involved. There's rumors of all that, so it's like possible that these characters are also going to show up in that. Like they're exploring more. Star Wars is ever expanding, and you can't count anything out nowadays. Like it's going to continue to evolve. It's become such a big thing. It's crazy to think that way back in, like George Lucas's era, when he's making Star Wars films, right? He makes the first three. He makes the Galaxy. He says, yeah, he's probably not going to do any more. Comes back, does the prequels, right? And everyone's like, okay, that's probably going to be it. And then it just, since then, Star Wars has evolved into something so much more vast. So much more vast. And the Clone Wars was kind of one of the first steps of that, to be honest, with doing TV series in this vein. It was the first, I think it was the first Star Wars TV series, apart from like the Ewok stuff and those droid ones in the 80s and 90s. Bit different. It was like the first real serious like take at it. That wasn't just like, here's like a bit of a cheesy spin-off. So yeah, and it's expanding to like the lore and the galaxy and the understanding of everything, and it got really serious. So since that has happened, Star Wars has become such a bigger thing, and it seems like it's only going to continue. And everything we're seeing now with all of these characters that are being introduced, some of the characters we've had since Star Wars Rebels, everywhere it's going, in 20, 30 years time, we could be revisiting these characters. And I think that's mind-blowing to think that the franchise has grown to that level where, what happened 20 years ago? 20 years ago, we just basically had Attack of the Clones came out in 2002. So 20 years ago was 2003. We were kind of just still all in the hype of that, all in the hype of the prequels. There were no Star Wars TV series back then. And it's evolved in 20 years' time. Imagine where we're going to be 20 years from now, 30 years from now. Imagine these characters coming back in 30 years. Imagine the stories they're going to be telling, the interconnectedness of the galaxies, the different parts of the timeline we'll have explored by that point. There is so much more. 2003 Clone Wars. Yeah, that's it. Oh, you're right. The 2003, the Cartoon Network one. It's like my favorite. That came out in 2003. So you're right. That was like the first TV series, I guess you could say. But that was a bit different. It was like only like 3-minute animated shorts. Super cool though. So cool. I love that so much. All right. I've been saying this for weeks. I've been saying this for a long time. Here's what Star Wars needs. A what if series. And now that we have access to the world between worlds, we can almost explore that. Because even though I don't think Star Wars should ever go into the like multiple timelines, like multiverse thing, I really don't think Star Wars should go that route. The world between worlds and the way, that kind of, that mystical place works is that you can literally, go in and out of different parts of the Star Wars timeline and different scenarios and endings for certain situations. And I still think that the Ahsoka series is potentially going to explore Anakin's fall to the dark side and Ahsoka's guilt around that, because that's something we still haven't really seen. I don't know, developed yet, have we? Like she's like I was saying earlier in the stream, she's still carrying the guilt of Anakin's turn to the dark side. We saw her process her guilt in the World Between Worlds today by, I don't know, like connecting with Anakin, but also connecting with her guilt she felt around the Clone Wars. And it wasn't really about the responsibility of her master though. It like, even though she faced off against Anakin, they didn't really go into or explore how, I guess you'd say like how she felt she was partly responsible for Anakin's turn to the dark side. And I think that, yeah, I think that's like where we could potentially be going next. I think if we get another flashback or if we get like another World Between Worlds moment, then that's where we're going to be going. And that's, I don't know. Yeah, like we'll see what happens there. I'm really keen for that side of things. Really hope they show what happens with Anakin. Come on, like, let's get Anakin's guilt with Ahsoka dealt with. It's a huge thing. It's a huge thing we know she's still burdened by. We know she still transitions to Darth Vader in this episode, the lightsaber, the red lightsaber stuff, the Sith eyes stuff. Like, it's like if she was seeing kind of her greatest fears in this episode as well. I think that's another theory or another thing we could potentially say she was processing in this mystical force World Between Worlds section of this episode. If she was like processing and going through all of that, then it's also likely that I don't know, like she's gonna like re-experience all of that in some way. I don't know, man. Like, yeah, more Order 66 stuff. It could all happen, right? Yeah, Star Wars without Darth Vader, right? Imagine that. Like, awesome. Thanks, Bryce. Like, what a great, yeah, suggestion. Can you imagine that? And that, like, there's a potential, you know, place where that exists in, like, I keep going to like the alternate like timeline thing. I really don't want Star Wars to go that way, and I don't think it is. I really don't think it is. I think it's more just like, it's like the Star Wars Rebels thing they explored. It's like what happens in the World Between Worlds is like you're presented with a choice. You can make a choice to either like save the character or save the one you love, or let history run its course. And if you choose otherwise, it'll affect what happens. It'll affect the future. It'll affect, like, that's why Ezra didn't end up saving Kanan, right? Because it would have affected his life and the lives of all the other rebels. It would have meant that his sacrifice was meaningless, and he sacrificed himself for a specific reason. I think that's what we need to see. You know, there's potential there. There's potential for that kind of show, where we can see someone make a decision like that. So really interesting. Gonna look at the list and see what else we have to talk about today. We need to hear Order 67, the dancing one from the Lego Star Wars. Yeah, that was funny. Good moment. Okay. Oh, guys, I saw someone in the chat earlier mention Huyang's eyes and how emotional they are. Like, great character design, I guess I want to say. Like, great animation by the ILM team, but to like use his eyes in a way that, you know, creates so much emotion. It's so cool. It's so cool to just see like his eyelids, or like they're half lit up. Yes, he does have yellow eyes like the Sith. That's true. I love that though. I love that the way they use his eyes to convey so much emotion. Him being a droid. The other thing, he's a droid. I thought droids don't have feelings. I thought droids don't have emotions. And Star Wars always, it has been like a bit, I don't know, like never like decisive on that, I guess. Like C-3PO and R2-D2 definitely have feelings, right? And they do kind of experience things. We see so much. So, you know, we see so much personality. They have so much personality and they do have feelings. But Huyang, man, had like proper heartfelt emotions in this episode, which we haven't seen a droid really experience on this level, I think, ever before. And I think it's just like disappointment. I think you could like, you know, you could almost say that he's been programmed to like feel or like experience these things to, you know, better connect with humans or better connect with other creatures. Huyang's been a real surprise of this show to me as well. I really wasn't expecting much from his character, but like, yeah, David Tennant, Doctor Who, previous Doctor Who, is like absolutely nailing it, first of all. Like, so good. love Huyang's character, but yeah, the animation in the droid and he's humorous. I like Huyang quite a lot, and I didn't think I would. I don't know. I thought he'd be like the kind of slightly dumb comic relief. I thought it was funny when Jason was going back to the ship, when he's like, "Oh yeah, I'll show you my ship." When Huyang's like, "I'll show you the Jedi ship," right? And Jason's like, "Can you train me to be a Jedi?" And Huyang's like, "No." And Jason's like, "Can you show me? Can you build a lightsaber?" And Huyang's like, "Yes." Jason's like, "Can you show me how to build a lightsaber?" "No." Like, so simple and hilarious. And he's just like, "Yeah, nah, mate." So good. I don't know. Like, I really enjoyed that moment. Senator Organa got a name drop. Did you guys hear that? They referenced Princess Leia. Senator Leia, I guess. It's really cool. That was a cool moment. Okay, here's the thing. Why was this episode called Shadow Warrior? Interesting name, interesting title choice, and honestly, in some ways, whoop, just knocked the entire desk. Cameronelli fell off the desk. No worries. In some ways, felt like, I don't know, like, what's the name of this episode about? Oh, guys, don't talk about Huyang's death, please. Huyang ain't gonna die. Huyang's my boy. Huyang can't die. He can't die. I need him around, man. I need him for life to continue in this galaxy. Please stick around, Huyang. If anyone dies in this series, people have to die. Like, we need to make some sacrifice. That's one thing I've said. Like, Disney need to take some more risks, kill off more characters, that kind of thing. Yes, more people need to die. So I guess, like, someone might die, and that might be Ahsoka. But at the same time, you know, please don't be Huyang. Huyang's like my bro. He can't die, man. He's like an ancient droid who is just, like, constantly has all this knowledge. Constantly... Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, nearly a top 10 live stream fail moment. Can you imagine? Huyang can't die. So the other day, I got a little story for you guys, and I'll get back to talking about Ahsoka and a couple of the other things. The name, Shadow Warrior, the name of the episode. But the other day, I got a story for you guys. I was recording a video. It's just a very short story. I was recording a video, right? Doing my thing, being real expressive. My camera is on the desk here. It's on one of those Joby tripods, which is like the bendy ones, because I like being able to just like pick it up and then film some other stuff around without having to like unscrew the whole thing and detach the whole thing. It's just the way my setup works, right now. The other day I'm recording a video and just like, yeah, my leg like bumped the desk as I was talking, and the one edge of the tripod was too close to the edge of the table, and the whole camera just goes like falls completely off the desk. Falls off the desk. I pick it up, everything's fine. However, the card inside it, the like what do you call it? The SD card, like a couple days later, stopped working. It's like an $800 SD card, one of the like real, you know, it's like a chunky one. I think it was like I don't know how much, like 500 gig on it or 600 gig or something like that. So expensive and fast, like the fast speeds, because if you're shooting like 4K and stuff, you need a fast speed. But anyway, it falls off the desk. SD card dies. Luckily, I was still under warranty, so I got a replacement, but like that has happened. And since then, I have taken several precautions to make sure the camera never falls off the desk again by basically just making the tripod more secure and wider, and also bringing it further away from the edge of the desk. Because I was really, you know, playing with fire there, and it was a bad thing. Okay. Couple things we're going to talk about still. We have to talk about the name of this episode, but first... Simply Mr. Knight, thank you so much for the donation. How powerful do you think Ezra is? Good question, because we don't really know like what's happened to him in the faraway galaxy where he's gone. I'm gonna say like probably similar to where he was in Rebels towards the end of Rebels, because I mean there's a chance he's like, I don't know, found his way in this other galaxy, and we have no idea where we're going and what's going to happen. We know at some point Thrawn is obviously going to return, right? Like, that's kind of bound to happen. It's guaranteed. It happens in the Legends Star Wars, when Thrawn was still, like, part of Star Wars canon, I guess, in the Timothy Zahn books. Thrawn's coming back, right? As far as, like, how powerful Ezra is, my kind of guess around this is somehow Thrawn has been able to, I don't know, like take advantage of Ezra in a way that he's like manipulated him to, I don't know, either like He's either imprisoned or something like that. I don't know. I don't think Ezra's going to be in a good way when we find him. I think Thrawn's going to be pretty okay for some reason. And when I guess when Baylan Skoll and the others find him, he'll just be like, yeah, can you take me back to my own galaxy? That's kind of how I'm imagining this, but I have no idea. We don't know where they're going, man. Like, yeah, somehow Thrawn returned, correct. We have no idea. That's the other thing that, like, this episode, we have never, I don't think ever in Star Wars seen outside the Star Wars galaxy that we know with Coruscant and Tatooine and Geonosis and all the planets, right? We don't know anything outside of that galaxy. So wherever they're going is going to be something like, hopefully, really mind-blowing and really crazy and really spectacular. And how they exist in that space, we have no idea. There's also a chance, this is pretty dark, but like, what if Ezra's dead, man? Like, what if we get there and he's like, for some reason, he didn't make it, or he's been killed, or who knows, man? Like, there's so many possibilities for what could happen. Yeah, I don't know. It's going to be pretty full on to see. I can't wait for what happens next episode. Hey, let's talk about Shadow Warrior, because that was the name of this episode, and I'm really curious as to why. I guess you would say Anakin was the Shadow Warrior in this episode, because he's kind of not real. He's a shadow. He's in this mystical world between worlds land, and we don't really know how the full extent of how it works. And you know, he's a manifestation of the Force, basically. But you could also say, like, in some ways, like if you refer back to the previous episode, you could say Marok was a Shadow Warrior, right? What does Shadow Warrior mean to you guys? I don't know. It's interesting to kind of think about why they would choose such a vague title in some ways. Is Ahsoka the Shadow Warrior? Is Ahsoka a Shadow Warrior because she's, I don't know, she's like a gray Jedi, I guess you could say, and she's also kind of come back from the dead in this episode. Ahsoka's fighting shadows. There you go. She's fighting, okay, she's fighting the shadows of her past. Maybe that's what it's about. She's carrying this shadow, this burden around with her. It's really poetic. It's really, you know, metaphorical. She's got this shadow that's been following her around this whole time, fighting ghosts, you know what I mean? Yeah, that's great. Love it. But maybe that's the reason for the titling. Good question. Yeah, I don't know, man. A lot of things to think about there. Shadow Warrior, love it. It's cool. Like it gets me thinking, and I like that. That's what this show is kind of doing now. It's kind of asking you all these it's asking you all these questions about, okay, why are these things happening, and what's happening about them, and what's, you know, what's the deal with them? Like, what else can we learn from these moments? Even the title of the episode. Like, when the title of the episode is making you curious, but the thing is as well, like The Mandalorian season 3 did that, right? There were episodes that were called, what was that one that was called? I can't remember. It was like the second last episode was called like, The Spies, right? And we all thought it had like a much more tangible meaning. We all thought it meant something like, oh yeah, the Mandalorians have been spying. They're going to like turn on Mando and everyone at the end, or, you know, someone else is the spy. We thought it had like a very literal meaning, when in the end, I think it was a reference to some other like piece of media, some other like film or something like that. I can't even remember. But these titling has been really, it's just engaging in a way that you wouldn't expect. And you kind of, it makes you think about why it might mean that and what the purpose of it is. And that's really interesting. Cal Kestis is a grey Jedi. Yeah, that's true. So being a grey Jedi, does that mean you in some ways do wield parts of the dark side? So in some ways, can you argue like Mace Windu was borderline grey Jedi, right? That's why he wielded purple, if you want to go with the canon reason, and not the fact that Samuel L. Jackson just wanted to wield a purple lightsaber, right? But we know that like Mace Windu, he had like some dark side tendencies and lent that way in some ways. And even in the way Ahsoka fought in the previous episode, we saw that in some ways. So is that kind of what it means to be a grey Jedi? Is there an actual like proper definition of, yeah, this is a grey Jedi, this is what this means? What do you guys think about that? Who is, you know, who is a grey Jedi? And is Ahsoka fighting her shadows? Is that why this episode was called this? Drink time. You guys drink as well. Don't get thirsty. That's what I'm trying to say. Came out very wrong. Asking about Star Wars 1313 ever happening? No, I don't think so, unfortunately. I think we might see more explored on Coruscant, hopefully, and see more of like open world Coruscant. I guess we got a bit of that in Jedi Survivor in the opening mission. We got to finally like explore Coruscant in a way that's like Metroidvania. It was kind of cool, but I don't think we're ever going to see 1313 come back. It's a game from like over 10 years ago. It got cancelled. Whole production mess. Don't think it's coming back. Yeah. The other thing is, once again, stay thirsty. Yeah. Oh dear. All right. Let's talk about the Force Echo ability. Talking about Cal Kestis and Jedi Survivor and Jedi Fallen Order. Ahsoka can just like use Force Echo now. We saw that in the first episode as well. But is that something you guys are okay with? That's I guess that's my main question. Are you okay with Ahsoka just using this ability that we thought you kind of had to be born with? We all thought that, I don't know, Ahsoka using the Force Echo ability was something that, the way it's explained in Jedi Fallen Order is that it's a very rare Jedi ability that only some Jedi possess, and it's something you kind of have to connect with through the Force from birth, it seemed, right? It's like you're Force sensitive in that way. And I guess the way in episode 3 of Ahsoka was explained, and the way George Lucas has explained it in the past, is that the Force is in everything. Everyone can learn to wield the Force. It's like martial arts, I think is how he described it. And you can evolve in a way that, and if you learn and train, you can get better at it. And obviously some people are more talented. Like Ahsoka says, talent is a factor in that episode 3. So is that what the deal is we're here with the Force Echo? Because as far as we knew up until the Ahsoka series, Force Echo was only something that could be wielded by very specific Jedi, being like Cal Kestis, and I think Quinlan Vos was the other one. So do you like, how do you feel about her using the Force Echo to kind of re-experience what's happened in a previous event and sense an echo in the Force to see, you know, she figured out what happened with Sabine and with Baylan Skoll. That, I don't know, that was really interesting to see that come back for this episode, and I wasn't expecting it. Yeah, they're kind of changing the Force, but honestly, they kind of do that in every new version of Star Wars we get. Like I'm pretty sure like every Star Wars film we've ever had has evolved the Force in some way. Like, first one, obviously, we understand what the Force is. Obi-Wan Kenobi explains it. He's like, it forces around us, it binds us, whatever. We obviously got the midi-chlorians as well in the Phantom Menace. You know, the use of Force Lightning in the original trilogy, the use of like Attack of the Clones, Yoda's absorbing the Force Lightning. We've seen the Force evolve in so many ways. And then, of course, we can talk about how it evolved in sequels as well. So Rey was just like someone who was super, super sensitive in the Force, right? Super sensitive. But interesting that, yeah, like it's also kind of evolving here in some ways. And we're seeing like her using Force Echo. We're seeing more of Force abilities we don't really see all that often. Even Baylan Skoll in the last episode using that kind of mind read to instantly figure out, what was it, like Force manipulation, I think it's called, something like that, where he instantly figures out what Sabine is thinking, and you know, he learns Ezra Bridger's name just by closing his eyes and going into the Force for like half a second and being like, this is what you want, I know everything, I know your desires, your mind is weak almost. Yeah, really cool. All right, more to read. First of all, can we talk about like Anakin just straight up, like as soon as they met, was like, as soon as he met with Ahsoka in this episode, he's like, you look old. And I'm like, oh man, like as if you just say that. Like it's so kind of like, it's rude. It's not only rude, but it's also like kind of Anakin's character to say something like that. It's very like just bold and brash, and he doesn't care. He does not care. And it was funny. I laughed. I'm like, yeah, bro. It's like, and Ahsoka's like, well, yeah, like that's how it works. Like, I'm like 40 something years old now. That's how age works. I'm getting older. You know what I mean? Pretty funny. I don't know. X Infinity, you're leaving. Thank you so much for today, man. You're a legend. Thank you heaps. Appreciate it. Good to see you. Good to see you all. Couple more things, guys. Couple more things to talk about. Also, the New Republic, man. What's the deal with the New Republic? The New Republic is the most problematic, like, I don't know, supposedly like democratic system organization we've ever seen, I think, in Star Wars. That's supposed to be like the good guys, but they're also like, yeah, we're going to basically, it felt like something so dark was going to happen when they showed up at the end of this episode, when they're like, yeah, the fleet's here and they're coming out of Lightspeed and they're just like walking in. I was literally like, oh my gosh, they're going to like attack and it's going to just be chaos. Instead, it turned into a lovely moment, where, you know, they fly past and everything. But yeah, man, that was like, wow. I literally thought they were going to start bombing everyone and it was going to be so intense and so scary and dark, and just they were going to have to escape on the whales or something like that. It's just like you can just sense the corruption in the New Republic, and it's scary every time they're involved, every time they're mentioned or even like brought up, or they got to take a call with them. Especially we saw them in Mando as well, like what happened in Mando early on, and like they're messed up. You know, they do the mind washing stuff and brainwashing. Yeah, it's like the New Republic, man. Every time they're mentioned, I get like the chills. And that they literally scared me coming in at the end of this episode. I was literally afraid they were gonna like start bombing or start attacking their own, because they're like, yeah, you haven't been listening to us. Simply Mr. Knight, thoughts on Ahsoka underestimating Anakin? Interesting. Good question. Yeah, thanks for the donation. Let's see. So, I guess she felt like she was at a point where, you know, Ahsoka has a certain cockiness to her as well. She's got this confidence to her, which comes from being, you know, it also comes from being Anakin's apprentice. She definitely seemed to think that she could just like get the upper edge on him because, I don't know, he's older. And in some ways, I think she knew this, what she was experiencing and seeing was a manifestation of her mind or of just of the Force, and it wasn't real. And she had to overcome those boundaries. When you say underestimating, though, do you mean in terms of like underestimating his potential to become a Sith Lord and everything basically Anakin became, or do you just mean underestimating in terms of you underestimate my power? Do you mean just underestimating him in terms of everything that happened in this episode and them dueling? Because I think, yeah, she I mean, it's hard to say though, because she would like, she's a product of war. Like I was saying before, she's Anakin's apprentice, but has grown up during the war and kind of didn't know any better and decided to leave the Jedi Council. But I don't think, and I think at times she definitely saw that Anakin had some like, you know, dark side tendencies, or just saw that he was a bit, you know, he didn't always follow the rules. Yeah. Yeah, before the fight. Okay. Oh, yeah, he said that, but she said that before the fight. I think, yeah, I think she was like overall referring to like everything that happens about him, right? Everything, like he falls to the dark side, and it's something that I don't think she could have ever predicted. Like no one could. Do you know what I mean? Like look at Obi-Wan. Look at what happened with Obi-Wan, and Obi-Wan. I think it's like seeing your kid become the villain. You know, become like so evil. Seeing your best friend like turn to the dark side, which is something they explored in the Obi-Wan series. It's a traumatic experience. It's something that's so evil and so something no one should have to go through. And it's sad. And I think, yeah, Ahsoka couldn't have seen it because she was so close to him, and everyone underestimated what he could become, even though they were potentially warned. You know, they talk about him being the chosen one and all that in the prequels, and the burden that must carry. I don't, you know, and they also talk about that like force clouding thing, the shrouding, where the Jedi weren't able to sense what was coming because of, you know, the Sith shrouding that and it being a dark time, and Yoda referring to be, you know, a dark time, and the force, I don't know, the dark side shrouds everything, I think is the line, the quote from Yoda. So it's so hard to like, I don't know, get a sense of that, I guess, and to see. I just don't think we can. I don't know. No one could have seen what Anakin could have become, and Ahsoka was so kind of in his shadow as well, which was the hard part of it for her. Ahsoka was so just like, you know, a part of his life, and she was off doing her own thing, and the last time they had together as well was kind of positive. It was kind of like, you know, Anakin gave her those lightsabers in Clone Wars Season 7. He gave her the blue lightsabers. He was proud of her evolution. He was in a good frame of mind. She, you know, really didn't... I mean, I'm sure she knew about Padme and stuff, but she also wasn't, like, gonna, I don't know, like, break into that part of his life, I guess, and, like, trying to drill him too much about that. It's just, it's sad. Like, you kind of predicted what he became, because he turned like that, and he became so evil because he was just blinded by love, blinded by his, you know, paternal issues with what happened with his mother, the fact he had no father, the fact he didn't really have a proper, you know, Qui-Gon was the closest thing he had to a father, and Qui-Gon dies. He's had a life of tragedy, so, I don't know. Ahsoka underestimating Anakin, I think, is so justified and so fair and so sad and tragic. I hope that answered your question. I hope that was a good, in some ways, a good explanation of everything I said. Yeah. All right. Had a couple other things I wanted to talk about. Let me just see. Fun stuff. Captain Rex, like I said, I want to see him back in the show, back in the series. I need to see him... I want to see him in more in like a live action sense. Do you know what I mean? Like, I want to see Tamora Morrison back. As you can tell, like, I've been talking for like an hour and a half. My brain is definitely starting to go, and I hope you guys are seeing that. So cool. All right, the big ending to this, right? The ending of the episode. I just loved seeing the Purrgil, right? It became such a, like, after Ahsoka came out of the World Between Worlds, after she was rescued, it became such a, just a transformative moment and such a, just like a wholesome storytelling kind of thing. And that's what I kind of appreciated about this episode. It wasn't necessarily the most mind-blowing and the most, like, you know, it had like a bunch of wow moments, but it wasn't like, it was just overall really felt like wholesome storytelling and like, hey, we're on this giant big adventure in the Star Wars galaxy, and that's what it's all about. And they're about to take the Purrgil into a part of Star Wars we've never seen before, into another galaxy, into another, you know, complete galaxy, into another world altogether. And it's just like the call to adventure was so kind of exciting, thrilling, mystical, adventurous, and just it was so much fun. And I love that feeling at the end where, even though you, like I was saying, I thought New Republic were going to come do something bad, but in the end they were just wowed by experiencing everything that was happening, by the Purrgil about to take Ahsoka and Huyang off into the unknown and into the other galaxy. And it was such a adventurous feeling that I haven't had for a while when it comes to Star Wars. It takes you back to your youth. It was that moment where it's like, hey, look, we're about to, you know, go into another adventure and something you've never seen before, and here we go. That's what this episode was about. It's the setup for what's about to come, and I'm so excited for what's next. Thank you so much for today, guys. It's been awesome to have you all here, and I'm really enjoying doing these streams. I'll be back next week. Really looking forward to it. If you could do me a favor just before you go, please like the video if you haven't already. That helps me heaps. Also, if you haven't already, check out my recent videos on the YouTube channel, on the main channel here where you are. Minecraft video, so happy with how it turned out. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I know it's a bit different to what I do normally, but so much fun. Something I wanted to try. Go watch that if you haven't. It's like quite an epic journey. It's Ahsoka's whole journey. So please enjoy that. Oh, Talzon, thank you, man. Chat has inspired me tonight. Mando Season 3 showed us imps for infiltrating the Republic. Sorry. That's true. Ahsoka shows up. The chat's moving too fast, sorry. Ahsoka shows us what they were working towards. Sequels shows us how the corruption in the Republic let a threat grow. I totally agree, man. It's coming like full circle with all that stuff. Thank you for sharing, guys. And yeah, it's been a great week. Don't forget the Clips channel. Lots of content about Ahsoka there. I'm going to be posting every day about Ahsoka for the next week until the next episode, when I hope to see you guys here in the stream. Thank you so much, guys. Great having you here, and I'll talk to you soon. Thanks for joining. See you guys.